Hello, welcome back everyone. Today we have a very special guest, Hayley Quinn, who is a dating coach in the UK. And this is very exciting for me because she is a female dating coach who's doing really awesome work in the world. So Hayley, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I like it. It's two women giving a perspective on dating because I think so much of dating is a little bit of it's man dominated.
Yeah,
In terms of advice.
absolutely. And we were just kind of, before we hit record, we were just talking a little bit about how so much of the rhetoric in the dating industry is around like, whether it's coming from a male perspective or a female perspective, it's very much like, here's what to do to like get the person or like snag so and so.
Hook,
Catch.
catch,
Get them in the
catch.
hook. Yeah, catch.
It's a little bit I think, and it always kind of puts, and I think the problem is when you language stuff in a way which makes it out like, oh, I have to do something in order to obtain someone. It sort of implies that you have to change something fundamental about who you are in order to somehow subtly manipulate someone into liking you, which is like the exact opposite of how you should be going about things. I find, particularly with men's, well, actually I could complain about the men and the women's dating industry quite a lot, but starting off with the guys side of things, what I hear a lot, and I'm sure you get this the same, is, Hayley, how do I flirt / tease / push pull / escalate, strange word, how do I do this thing with a woman in order to get the thing of her being attracted to me? And I'm like, as much as it would maybe it would be nice, I'm not sure, it sounds a bit evil, that if you could, that there was a simple input output for dating. It's just not how it works. And so I think it would be really great to like explore, because I also think it misleads people in terms of where they should be investing their time and their effort if they want to learn and improve in this area. Mm-hmm. I think it can take them off on this wild goose chase of focusing on completely the wrong things and therefore never getting the results that they want.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Mic drop on that. Thank you so much. That's what I've been trying to tell everyone for years. I'm like, yes. And that term you said to escalate, that's a very pickup artist term. And I think that's
totally
like a lot of, because for a very long time, like people want and need dating support. We all do. And for a long time, that was what was available, is like a lot of this very kind of like heady manipulative stuff of like, here's the exact scripts, almost, like in the online marketing space too. It's kind of a simple thing where we're like, here's the exact email sequence, when it's like, wait, we should be checking in on what is the brand mission? Like, who are you wanting to connect with? Like, and that's the interesting thing with this kind of work, because yes, there is surface level stuff. There is strategy in dating. Like, it is great to have a few things in your back pocket that you understand, oh, like these words create this kind of energy, or like there is this surface level strategy. But at the end of the day, it's if you're wanting to build confidence and you're wanting to build connection and you're wanting to like create intimacy with someone, you have to do the deeper work.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to piggyback on your word strategy, because I think and I'm going to sound like, I think there's a difference, sounding a bit like military here, don't know where I'm going with this, between strategy and tactics. So a tactic, that's a short-term play. That's like what message do I send to someone when they've stopped responding? I've been left on red. How do I come back from this? That's a tactic, right? It's a short-term thing that you can do to try and solve an immediate problem. But then that's often at odds with your broader dating strategy, which is like, for instance, if your strategy is, I want to find an amazing girlfriend, and yet your tactic is, this woman's left me on red, how do I come back from that? Those two things are at cross purposes, because, broadly you should be looking for someone who's contributing to the dating process as well, who's open, who's receptive. And so there's a point where actually there's no point Googling that text message, because instead you should be thinking, hang on a minute, how does this fit in with what I want for myself and my life? And that should naturally filter this person out.
Wow, that is such a good distinguishment between a tactic and a strategy, and how that, they can, like, strategy is it's the roadmap of like, oh, this is the kind of relationship I want to create. Like, where might this person be spending time? Like, what are all the possible ways I might cross paths with them? Like, how can I show up visibly so they can find me? Like, that's the strategy. And yes, absolutely. The tactic is the short term of like, what do I respond to this, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And yeah, we can get so fixated. What the questions I get a lot too is like, yeah, what do I do in this very like tactic situation?
Yeah. Yes.
And with the perception that there's a right or wrong, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
the move is contingent on what is your intention and what is your intention in the long term. Not so much like this energy we're kind of dancing around of how do I win? How do I win
Right.
versus how do I connect? Yeah.
So true. And I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier about the adversarial thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, dating can become about winning and about ego. And I can totally I mean, I've completely been there. I'm just going to fess up
Yeah,
to this
we
in
all
the
have.
past where I've just been hung up on a person, trying to really think about how I could possibly make this situation work. And what it becomes though is this tremendous, I say, like time suck and drain on your personal energy and resources. And if
Yeah.
there's anything I would say about relationships, it's like, I actually was speaking to a female client of mine, and she's met a new, I think it's gone in the relationship direction with someone that she's met, which is amazing.
That's the best
But she
feeling.
said her question was like, Hayley, I'm a bit worried because, I find myself that I'm not really thinking about him loads and loads, and I don't feel like I'm actively really missing him. And I was like, I don't know if actually that's a bad thing, because
Yeah.
I feel like when we're addicted to the intensity and we want the passion, and we're like, oh, are they ever going to message me back? Are they seeing anybody else? Do they want a relationship? And you're lost in this like quagmire of unknown. Whilst it can feel exhilarating in the short term, I think long run, it's just like a nightmare for your life. You will be turning up late for work, you'll be cancelling on your friends, you'll be ditching out of that class that you wanted to attend because you just really want to see this person last minute. And it's just so unhealthy. I think actually, if you have your relationships to give you calm, stability, happiness, comfort, support, all of those things, which mean you're so sorted and so good in that area of your life, whether you are single or in a relationship of any kind, that then you can go out and you can crack on and do everything else that you want to do in the world. The relationship isn't the central focus.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's such an energy drain when it's like literally a vortex of energy that's like, let me take all your focus. And very often, and like, we've all been there, right? I've been there too, where I'm like, it's an ego thing though. I'm like, why,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
like why is this person not into me? Maybe if I just say this in this type of way, then they'll be into, like, what is going on? What, like, and then we want to win, right? We want the validation of knowing, because it can feel challenging to accept, oh, this one isn't lining up, right? Because we're interpreting it all in such personal terms.
Right.
Yeah, what you said is so, so important too, where like very often I think we can develop an association between that intensity and like that it's an aroused state because we're nervous,
Mm-hmm,
we're anxious, and we associate that with like, oh, that's passion, when in reality, like as you said, sometimes very healthy relationships can feel, you're like, is there something that's supposed to be happening, right? Because we associate that passion with what is actually anxiety. So
right.
it's really rewiring that to be like, wait, actually, shouldn't it feel good? Shouldn't it feel supportive? Shouldn't it feel like something that, like, as you said, you feel so sorted in that then like you have the energy, you have the energetic foundation to then go crush it at anything else you do, because you're not hemorrhaging this energy wondering if your boyfriend or the person you're dating even likes you. It's not fun in the long term.
I mean, when you say it like that, Cora, it sounds like a no-brainer, doesn't it? To just like draw a line under that stuff. And it's funny, we're talking a little bit about how you mentioned that feeling of anxiety, because something I like to think about a lot is I think that there's nothing really like the early stages of dating someone where, to be quite frank, like you just don't know them very well and you're not sure what they want or what their intention is or where this going or when they're going to message you next. Like you have to deal with a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainty. And I think a lot of the anxiety comes, or the worry or the negative energy will come from actually trying to create certainty when you actually just need to go with the flow for a bit and explore. So it's like, I don't know, you start to do the classic stuff like going deep into, checking when they were last online on WhatsApp, getting your friend to watch their Instagram stories, unpicking, screenshot that message and decrypt what is the hidden meaning. You know, it's like the Da Vinci Code of dating basically at the start, where you're trying to constantly figure out what this all means. And I actually think sometimes it doesn't mean, well, often it doesn't mean anything. It just means that perhaps you don't know them and you need to keep going for a little bit. So I think that's part of the practice of dating in a way that's not only going to get you a better outcome, but it's also going to feel better along the way, which is starting to deal with that uncertainty.
Yeah, such a good point. And I think what we're really talking about here too is like how vulnerable it is, and how in the face of that we're like, oh, I'm kind of starting to feel something, I'm getting curious. And like the more invested we start to feel, the more the lack of certainty feels really scary. And then we want to grasp for control, right? And that's what we're doing with the screenshots and the, you know, checking when they were last online and all that stuff. Is we're like, oh, how can I like get some semblance of control in something that feels so uncertain, both in terms of not knowing the person, but also like if we've been hurt in the past, like many of us have, right? We want to know. We're like, is this a good, you know, is this a safe place to be investing this hope? And all of what we're describing, and like, I think listeners can hear per what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, this is inner stuff, right? This is like an inner set. It's not just, oh, the tactile, the tactic of, the tactile.
Tactile.
The tactile
something else
tactic.
Also related.
Oh yes. The physical escalation, if you will. But yeah, it's not just the tactics. That obviously it comes into play, but it's how can we be navigating uncertainty? How can we be like, you know, getting to know someone and calibrating and remembering, you know, allowing that hope and that excitement to be there, while also recognizing we're investing in them in proportion to, you know, how they're investing back, and we're building from there. But that, I'm actually curious your thoughts on this, because this is something that has been coming up for my clients recently around allowing for that hope and that excitement. Because what I've started to notice is, and, you know, I've experienced this myself too, you know, when we really get excited about someone, I've been seeing clients, you know, wanting to dim the excitement. And it's actually like that excitement is so beautiful. And I'm so curious your thoughts on this, because I have certain things I say, and I have a feeling they're similar to what
I mean, that's so true. And I think so much in dating is about balance. And I think we don't want balance a lot of the time. We want a concrete answer and direction, right? You don't want to be said, well, like, you know, you want to flirt and be encouraging and approachable, but you want to have healthy boundaries. You've got to kind of like find somewhere in the middle to take something that's more definitive than that. And I think a quote I read recently that I thought was very relevant to this and also very true is that being hyper independent and actually when you get to that point of being a bit like, screw you, I don't care, like whatever, whatever everything, actually that isn't a healthy space, a good space to be coming from. It's actually a response to like, I've been really, really hurt and I'm really, really aggravated by that at this point in time. So I'm just gonna I don't care about anyone. So we don't really want to get into that space. Instead, I think another phrase that I like is when you actually hold space for someone and you just accept that you don't know. So I think instead of going into like, but creating a story where it's like, you look at a few, and sometimes these objective actions are so small. It could be like, they called me twice last week and only once this week, or they didn't send me a good morning message yesterday. It could be these little tiny weeny actions. We don't really know anything about what's going on in their life. And from these small actions, we can start to develop this tremendous storyline about like, oh, it was because of something I did, or they're not looking for something serious, or they met somebody else. And we go into that whole story, and it enables us to color the situation, whether it's to make it more positive or more negative. And then we actually become detached from what's happening in the present, in the moment. And we go off into suddenly we're not really in the relationship. We're in our own fantasy idea of the relationship instead. So I say to people, you know, before you go down any rabbit holes, positive or negative, before you kind of go, oh, I feel hopeful, but I should because this is probably going to screw up, or you know, this is gonna instead, I would say, just to embrace, just to say simple things to yourself, like, you know what, I actually don't know, or I like them so far, I'm going to see how this goes, or let's just see how after the date on Saturday. So you just keep it really in the present, or as close to the present as possible. And it's also okay to change your mind. It's okay to find out new information about a person which makes them more or less suitable for you. It's, you don't have to, I think so much of the early stages of the relationship, and I think it's particularly happens in friendships as well, you want to call it, right? You want to go, well, that's my future husband, or this is just someone who's like this. And unfortunately, people are extremely complicated, and we can waste a tremendous amount of energy and effort trying to understand and gain insight into their actions and motivations. Instead, it is so much easier to work out how you feel about something. Like, stop guessing how anybody else thinks, feels, wants, what their plans are. Start thinking, how is this, how right or wrong or good or bad, or what, how does this feel to me? So for instance, in the case, instead of thinking, they're messaging me less this week, I wonder what's going on for them. What hidden meaning signal are they trying to send? How do I hook them back in? Or any of that stuff. Just scrap that. and instead just go, okay, how am I feeling about the fact that they've contacted me a bit less? Is this reminding me of something that I've had in the past? Am I associating meanings with this that I perhaps shouldn't? Do I want someone who messages me more often? How does it make me feel when someone messages me? What kind of relationship do I want? You can kind of find answers to all of those I questions, but you're going to struggle when you start to try and interpret how someone else feels. So I'd say also, I think it's so much more empowering for you, rather than being like, why don't you message me more? You know, why are you not open for a relationship? You misled me. I would just be, you get to such a point of sanity where you can just go, you know what, I could, you know, as you said earlier, I could just see this just isn't lining up. Or something about this, you know, it's just isn't right for me right now, and I'm just going to let it go. Doesn't mean that this person's evil or bad or a narcissist or has misled me or has tricked me. It just means it's not lining up. Intentions are misaligned. It, you know, you don't need to, no blame needs to be ascribed to either party. And you could just say gracefully, actually, like, you know what, it's just not for me right now. And take ownership of that and let that stuff go. And that took me a long time to work out. But I think it's so important for people. So I think to recap on that massive monologue that I just went on, basically think about yourself. Or you could, instead of making the questions you're asking, what do they think or feel, make it about what do I think or feel, because you're going to actually get some answers. Keep it in the present moment, you know, don't get too far ahead of yourself. And if you find yourself going down mental rabbit holes, do what you can to bring yourself back to the present. And also, if things aren't lining up, I often think I think when we meet someone we like and we get the feels with them, even if we've only had actually a very short experience of getting to know them, we can kind of prematurely go, okay, this person looks, it's like they look right on paper, they're doing the right stuff, they fit the idea I have in my head about who I should be with, and we felt a bit of jolt of chemistry there. So 2 + 2 = 20,000, and this person must be the love of my life. And even if all of their actions subsequently show that they are absolutely not, you know, a good person for you, you kind of keep getting this idea of them, and you keep trying to squeeze it into the relationship that you want. And instead, it's like, can we start like assessing people in terms of how they contribute to us and how they connect with us over a longer period of time, and stop putting so much on that first impression?
Yeah, absolutely. So much yeses to everything you just said. And what you just last said of putting so much pressure on micro interactions, or like what I hear a lot is, like the idea that we just like have a connection or we don't, instead of that's actually something we nurture with someone over time
Definitely.
through interaction. Yeah. And what I also love about what you said is this calibrating and kind of feeling into it from your side of the street, from a place of this, oh, is this lining up for me or is it not this, what we talked about, of this adversarial me versus them, men versus women, whatever energy, of, oh, they're bad because they're not texting me more, when it's really like, oh, I'm realizing I would like more active communication. And like, we can also communicate that with people, and we can also be with ourselves and say, oh, actually, this doesn't feel like it's lining up with what I want. And it's about alignment. It's about, are you on the same page? Not, oh, are you good or bad, or you wrong or right? Which is so important. And I love what you said too about the I questions. And that's something I say a lot with clients too, is just there's so many variables we can't control. And like, as we said, in these early stages of dating, when like it's vulnerable and it's real and we don't have a lot of answers, so we're just grasping for them where we can. We're grasping for that certainty. What we can control is ourselves and our introspection, and like what we take and what we learn from different experiences. So I always say that if we approach it like this, dating really gets to be this complete playground for personal growth. When we're taking responsibility for the I part of it, and like, what's happening for me, because we can't control what they're doing or what's going on for them. And like, very often, as you said, especially in these early stages, we don't fucking know. We have no idea what's going on for them.
I know, it's like, there's no point asking me or Cora about this. We don't know either, you know?
Exactly.
So.
It's like hard to say. Exactly. It's like hard to say. Maybe like, here's some indicators. Based on that, what do you want? Based on that, how would you like to show up in these So it really,
I like that you're doing it as ninja sensei moves.
Yes, exactly. It really is an art form. And what I say too is like, it's a process of discernment where you're listening to your logic, you're listening to your emotion, and ideally you are having them working as a team to help you navigate to like in line with what your intentions are and what feels good to you, not just, oh, logic. What are the tactics? What's the exact text sequence I can send to get any woman? I'm just laughing at some of the marketing you see sometimes around like the
slash away, you know, like it's so bad because it's also so what I don't like about it is so misleading.
Yeah.
Oh,
you froze for a second.
No, connection broken up.
Uh-oh, I can hear you though. There you are.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Phew. It's probably because it's 6 o'clock London time and everybody's at home and on the internet. God damn them.
You're like time.
Yeah, and I just think it's a good message that you put across there, just to be for those of people, for anyone who's consuming dating advice, whatever you want to call it. And I think I wanted to say as well, I'm a big believer that dating advice and coaching obviously doesn't have to be this dark, nebulous thing. I think it's pretty normal to want to develop great positive relationships, amazing intimacy with people. And sometimes like how the chips fall, we don't always get off to the right start with that. There's so much things about it that dating is such a, as you said, an amazing way that we can express our own personal development. So it's cool if you want to look into that. Like I took throughout my life, I've taken this major deep dive into dating advice, and it's changed, I would say, changed everything. So that's not all bad, but be discerning. Because if you see someone that offers you the 1 + 1 = 20,000, just think that can't be right, because guess what? Men and women, they're not like a unit. They're made up of billions of individual people that will all have different preferences and ways of dealing with the world. So it is impossible, I defy, because when you say, oh, I've got this 5 message sequence that turns any woman on or something, I'm like, I'm sorry, some of those women, first of all, some of those women aren't interested in guys. Some of those women are married in loving, committed relationships, not interested. Some of them are just exploring themselves right now. Some of them just are not into you. Some of them are not into dating. Like there's a bazillion reasons completely not to do with your messages why someone may not be receptive. And what I really think is important is, instead of making it about how do I craft this amazing tactical message which will just, you know, break through all the tests and destroy her this and that and all of that adversarial stuff. Instead, you should be thinking, as a man or a woman, you should be thinking, you know what, I actually need, if I'm going to date somebody and I'm going to invest my time and my energy, which is pretty limited actually in them, I need someone who's going to help me to co-create this. I need someone who's going to, if I step forward, they're going to step forwards too. I do not need 5 amazing tactical, mind-blowing texts that are going to do voodoo on whoever I send them to. You need to actually just be like, okay, these people, not so much. These people, if she's not responding to me, that may not actually be a reflection of me or how great my text message was. It could actually just be a reflection of her and where she's at in her life. And that may not line up, again, your line up analogy, with what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to let that go. Like, that is the healthy, sane way of looking at this. And it's not that you can't phrase messages in a slightly better or a slightly worse way, and there isn't things you can learn around how to write great messages. But before you learn that, the principle of, I need reciprocation, because relationships are co-created and you can only build a bridge from 2 sides, not one.
Yes, absolutely. The biggest prerequisite of you wanting to be with someone needs to be that they also want to be with you, or they're also interested. I think we forget that so often. We're like, oh, I want this, 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 and that. And it's like, also someone who is interested in investing back in me. Yeah, absolutely.
Underlined caps. Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear you say this, because I, you know, it's great to connect on this, because I definitely feel frustrated by that sometimes. You see something on YouTube and it's like, listen to the end of this message because I'm going to tell you the like 3 words that repel men at blah, blah. And it's like, oh man, this is just, you know, for people who are really wanting to learn and also wanting that certainty, it's just very toxic, a lot of it. So this is so refreshing to hear you say all this. I just so resonate with everything you said. So Hayley has a really cool program called Unite. Would you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, I actually developed Unite as to be different to all of the adversarial dating advice, where it's very like cloak and dagger and you have to learn some system in order to manipulate 50% of the population. I was like, first of all, I actually just don't think it works. Before we go into the ethics of anything, I don't think it works as well, because when you approach dating that way, in this really simple input-output model, whilst you might get certainty, you get an equation that often doesn't work. Like, it's too much of a broad strokes. And it's not the most sophisticated way of looking at a situation, meaning that you actually might mishandle scenarios and interactions that arise in your life just because you're not looking at the nuance, you're looking for the equation. And so instead, I wanted to create a program that radically broke down the barriers between men and women. So Unite, you can buy it as a man or as a woman. And when you actually go through the course and the training, you will follow your training course, say as a man, but then you can also follow the parallel women's training course to see how the steps of the process intertwine and interlink. So instead of it being all about you going off and, you know, getting the 5 messages to learn anyone, you go, okay, this is my step. What step should I expect to be reciprocated? Or what, you know, if it was a man who was interested in a woman, you know, what signals might she give to me? How might she demonstrate her willingness to invest time in me? Would she be helping me to build a flirtatious connection with her? Or likewise, if it's a woman, how can I, because I think a lot of women say to advice, we haven't really spent a lot of time sticking the knife into that, Cora, so let's just get this in before this ends. Is very much like, it's all about the guy, right? It's like, when you meet when he's the right one, he'll find you. And it's actually like
everything. And
yeah, the man will do everything. Exactly. And actually, no, men, you do not need to do everything. No, women, you do not have to do absolutely nothing. You know, there has to be, the men of the world have to actually have higher standards and expect more from the women that they meet. And the women, I think actually a lot of it comes back to being a bit more accountable and thinking about, how do I co-create that spark? How do I filter people effectively? How can I try and make this conversation, this interaction really interesting? So I kind of wanted to bring the two halves together in a way that is open and transparent to really enhance people's learning experience. So I was trying to do something super different. And I think, so if you're following the program, it's got 10 core modules that lead you from everything from how to meet people in person, online, great messages, great conversation skills. Yes, there's stuff about flirting in there, but it won't be this out of a can lines that will actually lead you to a dead end. It's all about actually building and increasing your knowledge and awareness of how people interact with one another, whilst also giving really practical and hopefully salient advice.
Awesome. And so that's going to be linked in this episode, the link to Unite. So that is incredible. And I love what you said too, of looking for the nuance in things versus looking for the equation in it. That how you phrase that is awesome. And in what you said too, when we're focusing on the equation, or we're focusing on the 3 lines, or all of these things that are out of the can. And as you said, like, this is not to say that we can't learn to be intentional with our language, right? Like that is absolutely part of this. But we have to understand the nuance in order to even, like, right, if we have 3 lines, what happens when you're 6 months into a relationship and something surfaces that is unique and nuanced and emotional, right? Like, how are we actually building skills alongside building dating skills, building relational skills? Because if you just have, those things out of a can, and then you're out in the, out in the real world relationship, and you're like, what the fuck do I do with this? Right?
Totally. And you're so right. The dating advice is like how to get the number, how to send the message. And then suddenly it like falls off a cliff at the bit where you're meant to be building the actual relationship.
Right. Assuming that once you get the person, all the work is done, when really, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Right? It might, there are particular things that are unique to the courtship process and the initial dating process, and there are skills that go into that are relational skills that serve later, but you have to continue to evolve with it. And this is where I think so much of what we're talking about is that dating work is personal development work, and we can't do the work of learning to date without looking at the personal development piece, without looking at like what's going on for us, like how are we like doing that work with ourselves and getting closer to ourselves and working on our relationship with ourselves so that we can better connect with others. Awesome. Oh my God. I loved this conversation so much.
Me too. It's made me feel a bit of hope. I was like, there's someone out there in Seattle who's spreading the good word.
Yes, I know. Yes, I feel the same way. This was so awesome. Thank you, Hayley. So
thank you so much for having me, Cora. I've really, really appreciated it and loved it. Thank you.
Yes, me too. How can people find you if they want more?
Okay, so if they want more, they can find me at my website, which is hayleyquinn.com. And it's an English spelling for Hayley, which is Hayley. I'm just generally pretty Googleable. So I've got lots of advice videos on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. So please, I would say to check it out. And also, especially if you want to, I guess, learn in a way that I think integrates both the male and the female perspective and doesn't come at this from an adversarial.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hayley.
My pleasure. Thanks, Cora. See you soon.